Today we're going to break down JBL's current portable speaker lineup. Everything from the small and affordable but surprisingly useful JBL Clip 3, the workhorse that is the Flip 4, the old man Charge 3, the incredible looking Pulse 3, the versatile Xtreme 2, and the big daddy JBL Boombox. Let's find out which of these speakers is right for you. Just so we're clear, this isn't a full review on either of these speakers. I'm just trying to point out the most important differences between them so I can help with your purchase decision. If you want to learn more about either of these speakers, then watch their full reviews. The JBL Clip 3 is the smaller speaker here and retails for $60. The Flip 4 retails for $100, the Charge 3 retails for $150, the Pulse 3 retails for $200, the Xtreme 2 retails for $300, and the JBL Boombox retails for $450. If you want to pick either of these speakers up, I'll have links in the description below, and if you use the links, it really helps out the channel. I suggest you check them out because JBL speakers routinely go on sale, and also check out the numerous shelf down below. First off, JBL's whole speaker lineup is all about durability and portability. All of these speakers have a fabric mesh covered body that does a very good job at standing up to bumps and scrapes. They're all IPX7 rated, so they aren't afraid of a little water, and except for the Clip 3, they all share a similar pill-like design with exposed passive radiators on each side. When it comes to charging the speakers, the Clip 3, Flip 4, Charge 3, and Pulse 3 all charge via a micro USB port, whereas the larger Xtreme 2 and Boombox charge via an AC port on the back. And this small detail is going to be very important when we talk about sound quality in a minute. Regarding battery lives, JBL advertises double-digit battery lives on all of their speakers, but only expect to hit those numbers if you're using these speakers at around 50% volume. But I found that using these speakers at around 80% volume, which I feel is more realistic, either one of these speakers should have no problem lasting at least 1 day of extended listening if you were to take them to the beach or something. Except for the Pulse 3. Even though the Pulse 3 does advertise a 12-hour battery life, since it also has a light feature to power, its battery life is all over the place. Depending on the brightness and which light mode you're using, your actual battery life will vary. You can get anything from 4 hours of playback time all the way up to maybe 15 hours if you're using a light setting like Jet at a lower brightness. Even though I love the Pulse 3 and it's perhaps the coolest looking speaker out there right now, I would really only recommend it if you're planning on strictly only using it at home. The Pulse 3 is one of those speakers that constantly lives on the charger, and even though the acrylic top is pretty durable, you could possibly scratch it or crack it if you constantly take it on the go with you. I've dropped my Pulse 3 a few times in the studio without any issues, but it's always landed on padded carpet. Okay, now let's talk about speaker setups. The Clip 3 has a single 40mm transducer and a single bass radiator. The Flip 4 has dual 40mm transducers and dual passive radiators on each side. And the Pulse 3 is kind of like a souped up Flip 4. It has 3 40mm transducers all underneath the fabric portion of the speaker, which also makes the Pulse 3 the only 360-degree speaker here. And since the Pulse 3 has larger passive radiators and a higher wattage than the Flip 4, it also manages to get louder and has more bass than the Flip 4. The Charge 3 has the same layout as the Flip 4, except it has dual 50mm transducers and its passive radiators are slightly larger as well. But things start to change with the Xtreme 2. It has dual 70mm transducers, but it's not just a larger Charge 3. The Xtreme 2 also has dual 20mm tweeters. And finally, there's the Boombox, which has the same layout as the Xtreme 2, but larger. It has dual 101mm transducers, the same 20mm tweeters, and dual passive radiators on each side. Now, before we jump into the sound test, just know the Boombox is in indoors mode and the Xtreme 2 has the latest firmware update, which did overall improve its sound quality.
Sometimes when you're here, I can't feel no doubt, 'cause you keep me where the stars are bright. It doesn't really matter, 'cause you're here with me now. It doesn't really matter.
like the Flip 4 and Charge 3, have sound signatures that put an emphasis on the mids and treble. And even though they do have a good amount of bass, at higher volumes they might start to sound a little bright. But all of the other speakers here have a neutral sound signature with just the right amount of bass and treble, so they sound good for almost every genre of music. And personally, I do prefer the new neutral sound signature over the older, brighter sound signature. Obviously, the larger the speaker here, the louder and more bass it's going to have. But the Clip 3 has quickly become my most used speaker here just cause I love using it to listen to podcasts. The Flip 4 is a good little speaker that's good for both listening to podcasts or music, but there is a benefit for going with either the larger Pulse 3 or the Charge 3. But personally, I prefer how the Pulse 3 sounds over the Charge 3. It sounds more balanced and it has a little more bass than the Charge 3. Now, remember at the beginning of this video when I said the Xtreme 2 and Boombox charged via an AC port instead of a micro USB port like the other smaller speakers? Well, that matters because these speakers sound different when they're running off of their battery versus when they're plugged in. The Xtreme 2 is rated at 20 watts when running off of its battery and 40 watts while plugged in, whereas the Boombox is 40 watts when running off of its battery and 60 watts while it's plugged in. And when either of these speakers are plugged in, they're going to get louder and they're also going to sound fuller. The Xtreme 2 does get more than loud enough and is able to easily fill a room with music. But if you want that thunderous bass that's going to shake your insides, then the Boombox is the way to go. When it comes to Bluetooth connectivity, all of these speakers have solid and reliable connections with very little latency, which is good for video. And all of these speakers have JBL Connect Plus, which is by far the easiest way to pair multiple speakers together. You literally just press one button on each speaker and the speakers will figure out the rest by themselves. You don't have to mess around with any Bluetooth settings and you don't have to mess around with any apps. It just works. But unfortunately, the Clip 3 does not have JBL Connect Plus, so you can't pair it up to any other speakers, which is a huge letdown. When I first got it, I assumed that it had it, but it doesn't. So let's wrap things up. I personally really like the Clip 3 because I love using it to listen to podcasts. Since it's super small and has a very strong Bluetooth connection, I can leave my phone charging in one room and easily move about the house while I'm doing chores without missing any of my JK news. And since it has a good battery life, I can use it for multiple days. If you're on a tighter budget, you can't go wrong with the Flip 4. It's an all-around good speaker for personal listening. But if you want something larger than the Flip 4, then I would get the Charge 3 if you plan on constantly taking it on the go with you, or if you need that consistently long battery life. But if you just want a speaker strictly to use at home, then I would go for the Pulse 3 instead of the Charge 3. But if you're going to spend the big bucks, then I would get the Xtreme 2 if you plan on using it at home equally as much as taking it on the go with you. It's much easier to travel with the Xtreme 2 instead of the Boombox because of that carrying strap. But if you want a big speaker that's mostly going to live at home and only occasionally plan on taking it somewhere, then I would get the JBL Boombox. Each of these speakers have their own pros and cons, and depending on your needs, one is definitely going to be better than the other. Now, the majority of these speakers are pretty early on into their life cycles, but personally, I think the Charge 3 and maybe the Flip 4 are next in line to be upgraded at CES 2019. Aside from sound and battery improvements, I would like to see fast charging and maybe even tweeters on the Charge 4. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit that like button and get subscribed. It helps out more than you realize. Support the channel by clicking on the links down below, and I'll catch you next time.